Good morning, Dellmarie.
Good morning. It's been quite a few months here. I know we took a break. So much has been going on, and I think we're back on schedule. We're right back on the same path that we should be regarding our life and talking about some of the things to enlighten all of us. Today, I'm going to talk about prayers and the strength that I find in prayers. And for some of the new listeners, what I say and what I talk about is basically on my own experience and my own opinions that I have. So it's not something that I say should happen to you. We all know what we have to do, but it's just basically sharing a lot of my own experiences. And today is a good topic, but first of all, let me go ahead and say a quick prayer here. We always start things with prayers, and so my prayer is going to be for all of you out there who are listening. Tunkashila ampetule ake oyakbubi yunka doske chunku na dako unkabla zakte hina onkion na tunkashila washte elna onji na dama onu na hanta dawa oyuk jokte tunkashila doske ho Wočekie kahabokišni na mišljava dohašna evaktužni tako prinkte hinatrukašla ovake hišnjašnje sojabi njesoja na tako ečanokte hinanjeni tratrukašla. So with that, I would like to say that I just prayed that sometimes, we are overwhelmed with all the things that are going on with us, but when we stay in prayer, it's up to the Creator to know, and sometimes we get overwhelmed with a lot of things that are happening. But when you have it in your heart, your unspoken words are also heard, and I really believe that. It has been, I guess the thing about it is, I didn't really think about it, but Mithankala Denise here had pretty much given me the challenge of talking about prayer, and I know she believes when I tell her that I stay in prayer every time. That's just the way my life has been, and it has been that way. I never really believed in prayers. I mean, I know we were brought up with it, ever since I was 4 years old. We were taught that the first Lakota value that we have is wochekie. Wachewakie he. I mean, the way that we translate wochekie is we plead, we ask. And when I would say the wachewakie is I plead, I speak with you, I cry to you, for the things that are happening so that the Creator may listen. And one of the things that I would really like to say to all of you is I do believe in prayers, and I think for some of us that really stand with prayer, we know for a fact that things don't happen just quickly, and some of us turn to prayers just when we need something happening, but we should stay with prayer all the time. And I can tell you that through my own experiences, it's been over 45 years ago. I got sick, and my mother took me to a ceremony, and I was told by the physicians that I would be on dialysis within the year's time. I had a kidney ailment at that time. There was only 3 of us throughout the United States that had the kidney ailment. And so when they told me I was going to be on dialysis, my mother says, no, she said, that's not going to be. She said, we're going to go into ceremony. Well, we went to the ceremony, and at that time, they had told me, that I had a purpose in life, and that I should remember my Indian name, Awayan Kuapiwi, which means they look after me. And they had told me, okay, these are the 3 things that you must do is you got to walk with prayer all the time and to remember everybody. You pray for all of creation. That's going to be your strength. The other part of it is not to take medication, pharmaceutical medication. And the other one was that I should always walk with compassion for others, to stay with prayer. I mean, again, and it's been 45 years later. Here I am, and I've had no problem with my kidneys, and I really believe that, to know that I stayed with those words, to know that prayer does mean a lot. And what I always say, we have that untapped power within ourselves. Mm-hmm. And Denise, I think, you and I have talked about prayers quite a bit, but we have that power within ourselves to make things happen when we stay in prayer, when we believe. And I had to think about that, since I was preparing for this. I really had to think, where did prayer start from? When was the beginning of prayers? Well, I know what I remember in one of my classes of comparative religions. There was a part that says that prayers began in the Garden of Eden. Mm. And that was one of the things that I remembered, and basically I didn't really pay very much attention, and I just kind of had to go through some of my college papers that I wrote, and I had written a paper in there, and I did use my experience as a topic, staying with prayers. Mm-hmm. And so I read that, and I remember reading. I read in there, and that's where I said, untapped power. Most of us really don't know. Like I said, we have that power within ourselves. When we talk, we speak to the Creator, And I had to think about my childhood because, like I say, we grew up with that. I remember my grandpa, first thing in the morning, he'd open the door, and the door was facing east, but he would open the door and he would stand out there and say, ha ha, hey, I'm better when we come to another day. And he would say his prayers, and I didn't know anything about that, but until, when I was 4 years old, that's when, some of our teaching started, significance of number 4 for the Lakotas. But anyway, that's when our teaching started. And so they told us about prayers, that when we're hurting, that was the first concept that I had ever remembered, was when you're hurting, when you have a pain in your heart, and that chante shija, they say chante shija means your heart is bad, but that's really not the concept of it. Your heart is breaking, or you're having a heartache for something that happens. And so I knew, when I got hurt or whatever, I'd pray right away. I'd stop and pray and everything. And the most significant time of my life to know where I started with prayer was when I was removed from my home and put in the boarding school. The things that I stood strong with was my parents telling me, stay with prayer, Mm-hmm. And so when I was at school, away at the age of 5, being away from my folks, there was insecurities, there was loneliness, there was times I missed my folks, and I would hear the other kids cry in the room. They'd cry themselves to sleep, and I lay there, with the big lump in my throat, But boy, I stayed with prayer.
Mm-hmm.
If that got me through, I didn't know at the time, but today I can say, you know what, I stayed strong and steady,
Mm-hmm.
Through my prayers.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I had thought about is, how did indigenous people begin to believe in a higher power, and where did prayer start? Boy, that's a big thing, because there's no concrete evidence. But what I had come to conclusion in my own opinion and concept is from what I heard is star people.
Ah.
The star people, somewhere in our history, or our ancestors' way of life, they must have had contact with the higher beings, or tunkashilas as we call them. But I think they were influenced by what they saw, the land, the sky, the creation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything that's created, they must have understood, where did this all come from? There has to be a higher power.
Right.
So that was one of the things that I had talked about actually we were talking about it the other day, because one of my kids doesn't believe in prayers.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I had to say, well, look at me, look at your mother. I said, I'm a prime example of prayer. And, I had to tell him, it's been 40-some years ago. And I said, look at that. I said, we stay in prayer. And when we're overwhelmed by a lot of the stressors, everyday stressors, you stay in prayer. Everything always works out. It's not in the time frame that we want it.
Do you think, Dellmarie, that sometimes people automatically equate prayer with religion, and that's the turnoff for a lot of people? One of the things that you said in the beginning of your show was that whenever you're talking, you're talking to the Creator. And so maybe for some people, they've never been told that you can pray outside of a church or a building. Would you talk about prayer as the way that you understand it, and that it isn't something that's relegated to what happens on a Saturday evening or a Sunday inside a building?
Well, I was going to talk about that, because there was confusion in my life when I knew about prayer, when I was taught about prayer, because they say you can speak with Creator anytime, and the most time what I was told was to be alone in your own solitude, because that is when you can think, and that you can open yourself up to the possibilities of answers through prayers, is what my dad used to say. I would have a better understanding being alone in solitude. So when I went to the boarding school, we were made to go to church. And I would, this is a good thing that that you asked that question, because it was confusing for me. We went to church, and they gave us the prayer books. They gave us their prayer books, and the preacher's up there, praying out of the book. And my dad used to say, whatever comes from your heart is genuine. When you pray, it's genuine when it comes from your heart. So I was a little bit confused there when I was hearing people say prayers through a prayer book, and we had to follow these prayers in the prayer book. And to me, as young as I was, I was a little bit confused. And it was almost like all the prayers, they kind of put the fear of death in me,
Mm-hmm.
And it was like they were condemning us, or we were sinners, and that was so confusing for me.
Right. And you were a child, so did it make you feel as though God or Creator was a mean figure?
Yeah, because I learned a different way, the compassionate a creator that gave us all of these gifts, the land, the water, the trees, the plants, and everything else. And here, when I went into church, I was being told that, we are going to be condemned, we're sinners and all this stuff. And so I feared for the fact that, oh my goodness, I'm a bad person, and if I don't pray, then I'm going to be in trouble. I'm not going to be one of the chosen ones, I mean, there was just a lot of thoughts that went through my mind as a young kid. And it was, it really was confusing until, like I said, like in my early 20s was when I really understood the prayers after I got back into ceremony. And that's when I realized that I was told I could pray anywhere, but you got to have solitude time, because that's when you find your genuine words. And of course, we are overwhelmed a lot of times with everything that comes about us. We turn around, we see everything, and sometimes we're lost for words.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about prayer and you think about the Creator, and I think the prayers give us comfort and how would you say, the faith that we have, that, I mean, I guess we all have to have faith, somewhere, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we believe that tomorrow's going to come. So I think prayers for me comes in the fact that, you pray and that gives you faith, that gives you comfort, and that gives you something to believe and to know that life is what it is. We still don't understand, why we exist.
Mm-hmm.
There's no concrete evidence. I mean, we hear all the stories about people that have the near-death experiences and they see Jesus and all this. Well, my own experiences was through some of the powerful medicine men. And that is still confusing to me, just because who are we praying to? All we know is a non-substance being that we think about. We all have the idea, and we all have our own names to the Creator.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that prayer is an energy in that way? Like an alchemical energy?
You know what? I really do believe that, because for the what would you say, the prayers, it's a consoling feeling.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I guess you would probably say that it is some form of energy. You release a lot of the burdens that you may be carrying, but with the words, that it's you release it.
Mm-hmm. I like that, and there's a lot of comfort in those prayers of releasement when we turn things over to a higher wisdom, or even the higher wisdom of what we may call our soul, or the mind of the Creator, the Great Spirit, to turn that over and create movement and energy and an alchemy. And recently with Todd, my husband, I will say until forever, that all of the prayers that were being said on Todd's behalf are what gave the doctors a window of opportunity to save his life. December and January. And because the doctors can't necessarily explain why he's still here, but I also feel as though when people know that they're being prayed for, that there's an alchemy or an energy that lights up within them to help them get through. How do you feel about that, Dell?
Well, I would probably say from my own experience of everything that I have experienced in my whole life, and that's almost 69 years. Well, I'd probably say 40-some years, because like I say, I never really believed in prayers, until my illness came about. And the thing that I really stress on people is we can say prayers for you But you need to have that belief within and that faith within yourself. You have that power within you to say your prayers. And one of the things that I always say is people ask for prayers, when in everyday life, they can go about, until something finally hits them where, oh my God, I need to pray, or whatever. But it shouldn't be that way. It should be with standing in prayer all the time, praying for other people, sending out that vibe. Sending out that vibe out there, I don't care if it's for the homeless people or the animals out there, or for Australia with the fire and everything, you're sending out that energy, that vibe out there, So I really do think that prayers are meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
We all have that power.
My cousin Corey is in the chat room, and she is saying absolutely. She's agreeing with you. And, for some of us, I grew up Catholic, and there were prayers that we were taught. I mean, we were taught to memorize prayers. So when I first encountered in my life that there were ways of, having conversation with the Creator outside of what I had to memorize in catechism, it was a little difficult at first. What do you say? How do you say it? And it took a minute to discover that really prayer is like a constant conversation.
Well, I think one of the things that people, prayers aren't something that's going to give you, and I see some beautiful prayers, out there, and for me, some of it is romanticizing the Indian prayers, the way the Creator and the flowing rainbows and whatever, But, the thing about it is, I'm sure it's genuine, but don't romanticize. I guess that's the only word that I can say is prayers are pretty much of value to us,
mm-hmm.
And I think the only thing I can say is the genuineness, what you feel in your heart, your words are going to come. And like I say, sometimes, you get so overwhelmed that you can't talk or say your prayers. And I had a good discussion with Leslie the other day. She said, Mom, I don't like the word prayer. She said, I like to say conversations that I have. And I said, you're absolutely right, because in Lakota way, that's what we were taught is to talk,
mm-hmm.
to talk with the higher power. And so when you talk and you want to unload, all the things that are happening, that's a conversation that you're having, with the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe we are stuck with the part of when religions of the world came about and everybody uses the word prayer. Maybe
mm-hmm.
that's kind of like a stigma.
Yeah, I would agree with that, yes.
So if I can say to you all out there is have your conversations, maybe a happy conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I can tell you when you say your prayers, foremost say thank you, first of all. Thank you for my blessings, We can't forget that because we overlook a lot of our small blessings.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
We overlook the fact that hey, I'm alive. I opened up my eyes today. What does the Creator have planned for me? I know that my life isn't over with.
Mm-hmm.
Or I come home and I say thank you for protecting me on the road.
Mm-hmm.
There's road rage out here, and boy, do I stay with prayer. And in fact, I even talk with Ken. Okay, co-pilot, come with me, protect me.
Uh-huh.
But that's basically who are you praying to? Sometimes, it might be our ancestors. Maybe it's our dear beloved ones that have gone beyond,
mm-hmm. Right.
And I believe that too, that they can go ahead and come back and protect us and hear our prayers and help us.
I agree with that completely, as you know. Very much so.
I really do, because, you and I have had our discussions just like, at the funeral, that was so interesting because the first night that I heard Barbara say, these two other relatives come in and everything, and I went to bed praying about it, and I told you, that I heard my dad's voice, and I had to interpret that dream,
Mm-hmm.
and it all worked out well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Right.
So those are just some of the things is, do we actually know, who is listening to our prayers? The Creator. Maybe Creator's too busy, but He's got angels. He's got, we have our spirit guides. We have our guardian angels. We have our ancestors that may be helping in that part, and they're listening to us.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really beautiful, and it's very comforting, especially here in the West where, the word religion and the word prayer are always kind of hooked together. They belong with one another. And Leslie's, thought about she likes the word conversation better, and I do too, frankly. I think because just if we're having a conversation of gratitude or a conversation of I feel terrible for something I've just done, it's no different than having a conversation with somebody who's a confidant, is how I feel about it, that when we can express regret or we can express gratitude, there's a healing in the expression, just saying it out loud. Or sometimes, as you say, and I really like you've had this kind of thought throughout the show today, Del, is that even if we can't express in our words, that Creator knows what's in our heart.
Like I say, solitude time when you say your prayers. I don't care if it's for a drive, and that's when I like my road trips, because it reminds me when I look around, and sometimes with the bustle and hustle of everyday life, we forget about the things, just like my drive up to South Dakota. I'm reminded when I look around and see the beautiful mountains and the fields of corn and everything, you know what? I say my prayers. Thank you to the farmers who work so hard,
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for whatever, It's a reminder. It's
Mm-hmm.
a reminder that we forget about the bigger life out there compared to what's happening in our daily lives.
Mm-hmm. And I like that, the thought that, just in saying thank you, that is a prayer. That's a conversation.
I sure do believe that, but I always, this is basically, one of the things is this past run, spiritual run. Oh, there are some beautiful, beautiful words of wisdom about faith, about the power that we all have within ourselves. And Philip was really a good speaker on one of them. And one of the things this past theme was unity, and he had talked about. About no matter what color skin, no matter what, we have to stay with prayer. We have to pray for others, who may hate, who whatever. But he said when we stay with prayer and we do everything with prayer, in which we do, and that
Mm-hmm.
all Indian functions start with prayer.
Yep, they sure do.
So anytime that people are praying, it's a gift to us.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that completely.
It really is a gift to us when we pray for others.
And would you talk for just a moment as we wrap up the show, Del? When you're doing your beadwork, when you're creating and you're beading, you put prayer into your work. Is that something that all of us can do, no matter what our work is?
Well, it sure helps.
Uh-huh.
It really does, because do we not value the gift that's given to us? The
Mm-hmm.
talents, the gift of creation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a gift to us. And so when I I do my beadwork and I'm sitting there, of course, I have to concentrate, but every little bead or, as I'm sitting there, I put my prayers into my creation. And, sometimes the way I think about how I want to do my work doesn't usually come out as I'm beading. It comes out a whole totally different thing. And I say to myself, oh, okay, all right, this is the way you want me to work on it. So I really look at when you're doing something, I don't care if you're reading to children or if you're talking to people or whatever, with the prayers, I think it all is meaningful because sometimes the outcome is not what we expect. We always think prayers is what we expect.
Beautiful.
Now, I mean, am I making myself clear
Yeah.
in regards to saying prayers are basically you don't really know the outcome.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes prayers are answered in ways that we never, ever, ever expected.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that they always say too is be careful what you pray for.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time.
Oh.
So, but the instantaneous relief of your prayers is not going to happen. I mean, you pray, you pray for a quick recovery. That may not happen quickly. I think it's just the way the energy flows. Again, that's what I say is we look at it as energy, but yet at the same time, we can say it's not our call.
I like
the
that.
Creator's call.
Beautiful.
And I really have to tell people that, when they lose a loved one, and they get angry, well, that's part of grief, but yet at the same time, to make them understand what is the lesson here.
Right. Beautifully said. Well, Dell, it's great to have you back on the air again. I know that I've enjoyed having you live and talking about prayer this morning, and I know everyone who's listening to you right now is so happy to have you back.
Oh, thank you. And you know what? I would gladly take some suggestions on topics from some of you all if you want to discuss something or if you want to hear more of some of the ways that I perceive things and try and correlate. A lot of the Western ways compared to the way we grew up as Lakotas. I'd be happy to address those.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dell. Have a beautiful day, Chue.
All right, you as well. And thank you all for listening. But like I say, any suggestions is helpful too.
Thank you so much.
Doksha ake.
Doksha ake. Bye, Dell.
Bye.